Welcome, fellow Phoenixes, to the Spiritual Phoenix Podcast, where we make a daily offering to the divine by putting our past on the pyre, searching the smoke for spirituality, turning the ashes into art, adapting isolation into connection, and manifesting mental wellness. I'm your host, Ross Cessna, and together we are the Spiritual Phoenix. The intent of this show isn't to tell you what to think, but to get you to think and originally articulate yourself in a way that is uplifting. We are the artist of our lives, and today is a blank canvas. Let's collectively create a better tomorrow. And right now, I'd like to take a moment and focus on what we are grateful for today. Okay, today I am grateful for the ability to have a deeper level of self-awareness, a level of honesty, and the ability to share about my path and my experiences in a way that might be able to positively impact other people's lives. And with that, I'm going to get into today's topic. This is kind of an extension of a topic I did very early on in the show, talking about the divine feminine or sacred feminine or whatever you want to call it. And when I did that episode, I really shared about things I shared maybe more about specific people that I had harmed, but maybe in a more general way. And I was recently talking with some of my friends that are feminists and that are actively working for women's rights. And the conversation kind of came up about, what can a man do to help progress that cause? And one of the things that they had talked about was kind of actively calling out other men for their bullshit when we recognize it, and bringing awareness to that kind of stuff, like being an advocate and being present to help women through this transition. And it's almost, I'm going to skip that thought and just get to the meat and potatoes of everything. So oftentimes we have this concept of what certain people look like and stuff like that. And as I've evaluated my past, and as I've really gotten clarity on some of my old behaviors on a deeper level, I recognize this deep toxicity that I've had towards women from a very early age. And none of this is going to be easy for me to tell. And it quite literally could come back and bite me in the ass. I guess not literally, but it could come back and bite me in the ass in some ways. And I guess that's okay. It's really about owning up to my own experience. And that being said, there's not any way that I can make amends in some of these situations beyond changing the behavior that I've done and acting differently. So even before I ever got involved intimately with women, there was experiences where I would just kind of pick up women and leave them, like even before like deep physical intimacy was involved. I would be overly attentive and kind, and then when they would get close, I would push them away. This is a pattern that I've had my whole life. Very early on, I took advantage of family members in the sense of stealing from them, lying to them, cheating from them, like normally all to women because women seemed softer and easy to manipulate to me. My first intimate encounter, and this is something that I had to really look back on with a whole different lens when I entered recovery. It was actually, when I lost my virginity, it was quite actually date rape. And the thing that I've come to find out is you can unintentionally take advantage of people as well. And that might not make sense to some people, but if the conscious thing was to go out and do those behaviors, you don't have to consciously think I'm going to rape this person, or and I can say that they were consensual, and they were, but at the same time, one of their friends contacted me after the fact, and basically said that I had raped them, and it fucking hurt. And you know what? It should hurt, because that was unacceptable behavior, and it really patterned a lot of how I pursued intimacy later on in my life. Really, from that point forward, I only ever had sex while intoxicated for the most part. And that's not to say that I never didn't in the confines of a relationship, but the majority of my intimacy was expressed through intoxication. And the thing about that I've really found in my personal life, and I think that it's relative to anybody else in their personal life who pursues rape, date rape, anything like that, is from fear, it's from inadequacy, or in a search for power, which power is based upon fear and inadequacy. None of it comes from those individuals being in a good place. And it doesn't reflect anything on the individual. And this culture of victim shaming and victim blaming is fucking disgusting. And even as somebody who's done a lot of shit, I was fucking in the wrong. Like, there's nothing that I can do to ever make that right. The only thing I can do is change my behavior. Some of the other things that I've done that I've really regretted, and it plays into this whole thing of toxic masculinity and disrespecting women, is having paid for sex at times in my life. And fortunately enough, I didn't get any diseases from it. I had no ill effect from it. Physical ill effect, I should say. But the emotional damage that it did to me, and then thinking about the emotional state that person must be in to willingly sell their soul for that. And that's the thing, like, I've literally bought pieces of people's soul from those actions. And it doesn't make me feel good to say any of this. And it makes me feel like a pariah in lots of ways. But at the same time, I want to tell people that maybe have done those things that you can first off change those behaviors, and you can start to make amends for those things by no longer acting out that way. And going out and apologizing to the people that you've harmed in that capacity is never going to be enough. It really is the essence of making amends. Some of the more subtle ways, and by subtle, I don't mean to imply that they're any less toxic or unhealthy or anything like that, that I've really wronged women in a real sense, is cheating on significant others, stringing women along to hook up with them, and then completely disconnecting from them, ignoring them after, ghosting them after. And that's messed up. Even in recovery, having changed some of the old behaviors, there's still things that I've done that I have remorse for, and I actively have to work on changing those behaviors as well. Some of that was involved with being in power exchange roles, and although it was consensual, it didn't feel right to me after some of my previous behavior. And I have to use how I feel internally as a as a compass for what is right for me. Even though that might be socially acceptable in our culture, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's appropriate behavior for me to act out on. And honestly, if you look at what is socially acceptable in our culture, there's kind of some gray areas there as to what actually is healthy. And probably one of the more recent and more thought-provoking areas in how I've wronged women in a sense, and even though I responded to this situation better than I thought I would or thought that I could, there was still ample room for improvement. And this area would be in somebody that I was in a hookup relationship with, just hooking up and having the condom break, and them getting pregnant, them deciding on getting an abortion, me showing up financially, but also shutting down in an emotional way and not being there for them in the capacity of a caring individual. And although I was there in lots of other ways, I could have been present in a deeper way. And there's no way that I can make that right. There's nothing that I can say that can remedy that. The only thing I can do is change my behavior, which is learn to be more emotionally present for women in my life. And that's just kind of my message to men in general who are looking for ways to support women on a deeper level, ways to be there, I guess, and actually have deeper connections with women based on respect, is to take accountability for your mistakes. Look at instances that cause problems. Oh, another thing that I want to bring up, which is also equally unpleasant, is in certain relationships, I really pressured for sex. And there is this karmic fruit in all of that, where in my last committed relationship over 6 years ago, that person was pressuring me for sex, and I didn't feel good in my body because it was right after all of my mental health stuff happened. And I never understood until that time on such a deep level how hurtful that was, how disrespectful that was, and really how insensitive that was. Because the thing that I've learned is, if you're actively being there emotionally for your partner, and if you're actively engaging in your partner's life, the sex will be there when it should. The intimacy will be there when they should. Lack of intimacy in a relationship is a symptom of lack of actual connection and lack of actual bonding, lack of actually being present in that person's life. One of the things that I want to share that isn't my own experience, but which is also a topic that I think is relative to bringing up, and I guess there's probably shades of this in my own experience, but in one of the groups I was in at one point, somebody cheated on their significant other, which I definitely, I guess I can relate. Wow, that goes to show you sometimes how deep denial runs. But this person blamed their partner for cheating, for them cheating. This person cheated and they blamed their partner for it. And they said that their partner had to change some things. So in my own experience, every time I've cheated has been a symptom of my own character weakness, a symptom of my own lack of communication, a symptom of something wrong within me. And in our culture, it's all too common for maybe a man to say that they weren't getting the intimacy they desired. But like I previously stated, intimacy comes with the connection. And if you have the deep emotional connection and the intimacy isn't there, you should be able to understand why that is. Um, Overall, I'm fucking disgusted with the way that most men are. And it pisses me off in a sense because I've had this disgust for the way that men treat women for a very long time, but I was blind to the fact that I was actively participating in the shit that fucking grossed me out. Um, and I'm not going to say that I'm perfect at not doing it because it's fucking ingrained in our culture. And that's an excuse in some capacity, but I'm doing my best to be vigilant to avoid acting like that in the future. And really, here's the thing, guys. If you want to have valuable women in your life, women who lift you up, women who fucking inspire you, women who encourage you to be your best, then you have to look at yourself in the mirror and really look at your own freaking behavior towards women. Here's the thing. Anybody here should be able to look at another human being, regardless of age, race, sexual identity, creed, religion, lack of religion, and see this as a human being that deserves respect, appreciation, compassion, and all of this stuff. Granted, certain people make choices that make it more difficult to love, make them more difficult to love. And I even expressed in an episode how the value that we create in this world is based upon our own choices, the value of ourselves, and we can depreciate that value. At the same time, all of us need to look at each other equally in the sense of being a freaking human and say, this behavior is wrong for anybody. I can't treat people like this and feel good about myself. And I didn't say any of the stuff that I did for any benefit. Like, it's not going to help me in any way to express that, beyond the fact that I feel a little bit better about being honest in a public forum with what a piece of shit I've been in a detailed way. I can move forward with that. And I've touched base with the fact of maybe why I've had some time separate from women. Maybe I needed to learn to process all of this stuff in order so I could show up in a real way in a woman's life and actually be a freaking man and not this distorted caricature of a man that our culture portrays. I really don't have much else to say about this. I could sit here in tears and say I'm sorry for all the shit that I've done, but rather than say empty words and get emotional about it, I'd rather actively continue to do what I've been doing, which is change my behavior and try to add value to people's lives today. And it will never compensate for the old behaviors, but I can make a new start. So men, if you're out there and you've done some of the shitty stuff that I've done, which is, it's all pretty shitty. You can change, but it starts today. And it starts with, first off, being honest with yourself, not making excuses for why you acted that way. You don't have to necessarily physically reach out and apologize to the person because that can create way more harm, but you can change your behavior in this moment, in this instant. With that, I love, respect, and appreciate all of you. Namaste.